when you go to become a Buddhist monk and you start in the very, very early stages, you go into a house where there are many, many things, chairs and seats and all of these lovely things in the house that you can enjoy. And as you go up through the grades of becoming a master Buddhist monk, the things disappear. And in the end, when you're the top level, you just have your cell with your bed and your chair and maybe your book. You don't need the extra things anymore because everything that you have is within yourself and you're happy with that. Modern society, from an outsider's view looking in, as you said about the hedonism quote, it is making you chase the new thing all the time, and that will never, ever make you happy.
I am today accompanied by Steve Brucker. He is an explorer, author of a series of 5 books collecting his exotic stories and experiences. He was born in the UK, but currently resides in Mombasa. I would like to hear a bit more about that in a few minutes. He has spent the last 20 years living and working in East Africa. Hello, Steve, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Alex. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. It's an honor having someone who had so many exotic experiences. The other kind of guests that I usually have are just really cosmopolitan people that are not really experiencing those kind of exotic experiences that are most of the times really different to what we're used to.
Thanks very much. Yes, I've tried to live a bit of an exciting life.
What would you say is the thing that is the most remarkable in comparison to the West?
Africa is a very strange continent to live on. I don't think there are very many comparisons that we can make directly from East Africa across to the West, Europe, or even America. It's like going back in time. Everything is completely different. It's amazing when I come across to go and visit my children in the UK, just for the light switch to work or water to come out of the tap is quite a surprise.
Oh, so your children actually live in the UK?
Yes, they've all grown up now. They were brought up here. I schooled them here, and they all left when they reached the age of 18 to go to university in the UK.
Aren't there any good universities in Africa?
In Africa, probably, maybe, but not in Kenya. Kenya doesn't have a very developed educational system, nowhere near as good as the UK.
I'm just checking the GDP per capita from Kenya, and it's $1,800. If you compare that to the GDP per capita from the UK, which is like $45,000, there's a huge difference there.
Yes, poverty here is massive. Even in the cities, we have major slums, we have quite a lot of crime and corruption. That $1,800 is a reasonably sort of average salary for a youngster around 20 years old. That's not poverty line, that's sort of living line. People live on a lot less than that here. Some people live on $5 a day and less.
Oh, wow. And how is it that you decided to move to such a much poorer place than the place in which you originated your life? It's usually the opposite. People who get born in Africa move to Europe. Why did you do the opposite?
That's a good question and very, very true. I was living in central London and I just had my 4th child. I was in my early 30s, 34, 35 years old, and I was running a language school. Now, the problem with any city, from my point of view, is that children can't grow up very well. My daughters weren't really able to run around. I watched them on a sports day and they were just like not particularly happy doing sports. We tried to teach them to swim and it was in a swimming pool just a little bit bigger than a bath and they were just pounding around there and it was awful. And my wife at the time was from Kenya. And one day, my second daughter, Neve, she had a terrible breakout of eczema. And I said, that's enough. I'm finished now. We're going to go and live in a more hospitable place for health. So we packed our bags. I sold my business and I thought I would try my luck here in Kenya. So I ended up in a town just outside of Mombasa called Mtwapa, which was a village. We had a generator in our house. We didn't have electricity. We had a well. We had no running water. The toilets were on a septic tank. It was all completely living in the bush. But my children saw the sunshine every day and they got to run around and climb trees. And we had a boat. So you play on the boat, and we were on the coast. So we were on the beach. And I was able to find for the younger children, they were only 7 and 8 years old then, between sort of 2 years old and 8 years old. And we were able to find a nice local school that we were able to put them in to get the basics of education. So I thought it was a good idea at the time. But when you're 30, 35, you do lots of strange things.
Yeah.
Which when you look back on...
I might consider doing that, but definitely not if I'm 50.
Exactly.
Things are very different.
Yes, you have to think a lot more when you get in your 50s.
Anything or many more things can injure you in a much worse way.
Also, fear. Fear becomes a bigger part of your life.
Oh yeah, you're right. I've heard this. I don't experience this by myself, but I've heard a lot of older people than I am talking about how you realize that you are actually mortal at around 50.
Yes, and you worry about living a nice life and making sure you have your breakfast in the morning and all those things. And when I was a lot younger, I didn't think about those things. I jumped in with both feet and figured out if I could swim or not.
It couldn't be otherwise. If we weren't so stupid in our younger age, evolutionarily, we wouldn't have been able to spread our genes as much. So there's been an adverse selection here of the most stupid, or maybe not stupid, but ignorant of the actual risks on our environment.
Yes, I'm kind of extreme in that. When I was younger, I've done a lot of traveling and a lot of, as you said, exploring and a lot of risk taking. But that's great when you're young because, as you said, you feel that you're immortal and you don't really have responsibilities and your comfort can come and go and you don't really mind. Whereas as you get a bit older, it becomes a necessity.
Yeah. I feel like you moving to Kenya have been able to modify your environment in a way to adapt to your evolutionary necessities. Your kids have been able to grow up in a place that resembles in a much better way their evolutionary environment than London is. Don't you think?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I think I'm still a firm believer that outside is better than inside. And learning by exploring and learning by touching things and doing things is very, very important for later life because it's the way I learned. It gives you confidence to move and you have confidence in your body and you have a lot more confidence in your decision-making process. All of my children, when we came here, could swim and dive, scuba dive and windsurf and wakeboard and all these kinds of things that we were doing continuously. They climbed trees. Because there were no real rules here, they were all driving cars when they were 10 years old and that kind of thing. And it gave them, I think, a bigger confidence to go and explore the world. So I think you're right. The younger you get that sort of ability to develop in those areas, I think when you're younger is a bit more important than your ABCs and your mathematics and these kinds of things. And they've all gone on to do very, very well in the UK. So hopefully it worked.
So I agree with you in that it is really important to have a taste or a feel of how your locomotion works. If you have never put yourself in a situation in which you were required to sprint for about 20 seconds in an open field, checking all the possible dangers that you have in your surroundings, having a panoramic view, and searching for, I don't know, like whatever we have been evolutionarily developed to face. I think that really is something beneficial, but we lack that in our current Western societies.
Especially now. Now we've all, after the pandemic, where we've all been locked away, and there's a group of people who have been locked away for 2 years, and they're missing that, children that are missing that part of their life, which I believe is incredibly important.
Do you feel this is quite a common knowledge that the West is a racist region in the world, but I actually think that it is the least racist in the world. Do you feel any kind of racism against your kids by being half white?
Yes, my children actually suffer more racism in Europe than they ever did in Africa.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's very hard to understand if you aren't brought up in an environment that is largely different to your environment, because you tend to fit in. Me in Africa here, I am very often the only white person in any group of 200 or 100 or any size. I'm the only white person there. So I suffer from a kind of racism, but my children were mixed race here, and they were just treated by the kids, the Black African kids as African, the white children as white kids. But when they went to Europe, they were labeled as black. So they suffer more there than they ever did here, which is strange. But racism is a difficult subject. You need a whole long video on discussing racism, because it's a very nuanced subject to discuss. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe we shouldn't really touch on that, but I've experienced this in first hand, not by having people be racist towards me, but I had a classmate, a girl, and she was half black, half white. But in our class, being all white, she was considered to be black. But there's something curious that she said that when she went back to Africa, I don't remember exactly, I think it was the Congo. She was from the Congo. When she went back to the Congo, they considered her to be white, not black.
Yes, they would. But the racism against white people is not what you hear. We're a very small minority. We get some hatred, but people don't abuse us very regularly. People are much more polite here. They don't attack you in the way that they do in Europe.
Okay. What do you think of depression rates? Are depression rates much lower in Africa than in the West?
I think expectation rates are much lower here, so we don't get depressed. We're happy if the electricity is working, like today, and I haven't got to run a generator. So depression, I think, again, I don't really know this, but I think that here our expectations of a daily life are much lower. If something works, we're happy. And if the road isn't closed for one reason or another, or the bridge isn't broken for one reason or another, then that's a good day. We don't really have a huge amount of time to spend being depressed, because otherwise everything would depress us, because we have mosquitoes, we have everything here. And as I said before, there's a lot of poverty. So if we thought about it in a Western viewpoint, then we would be depressed all the time, because everything breaks all the time.
Yeah.
It's like I can't ring a policeman here to come to my house because it just doesn't exist. The policemen are there, but they would never come. We don't have an ambulance service that would come to us. We don't have a fire brigade service that would come to us. I can't rely on the local municipality to provide water or electricity. None of those things work properly here. We have policemen on the street, but they're not really that interested in solving crimes or helping people.
And how do you deal with that lack of security or in case something goes wrong, you have this service that will get you out of the problem.
That's one of the things that drew me to this country, actually, the standalone independence that you have to have, the resilience that you have to have. In a maybe a strange, perverted way, is something that I enjoy because I stand alone all the time. I don't have these services that I can just demand and rely on. So it makes your brain work in a different way. When I work in the ocean here, which I do a lot in the boats, and I sail offshore or I sail down to Tanzania or somewhere like that, we have no Coast Guard, we have no functioning Navy. So once I leave the shore, it's up to me to make sure I come back. I could radio all day long, but nobody would ever come and save me.
Oh, wow.
But it gives you a really big sense of independence.
Interesting.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it's something that you get a bit addicted to.
I think I understand your point. Do you know Nassim Taleb?
No, I don't know what that is.
He's an author of a saga called Incerto, and one of his books is Antifragile. The basic point of the book is that there's some antifragility inherent in many systems. And one of the things that he describes as being partially or marginally antifragile is the human body. When you are surrounded by chaos, you don't get deteriorated, but you grow out of that chaos. But
I agree.
And we are evolutionarily developed to do this. So when you take that chaos that you are developed to deal with out, we're not as able to maintain a sane mentality or like a healthy relationship to our environment as if we had that chaos that you have and you're 100% responsible for your own well-going.
I agree with you. And it is addictive. That's one of the reasons why coming back to Europe is very difficult for me. For a week, it's lovely. I enjoy the things, everything that works and everything that's nice. And there's a policeman on every corner and all of this kind of stuff. But then it starts to become a burden that I feel I'm carrying. It's like removing my freedoms. And so after a week or 10 days, I'm eager to get on the plane and come back to Africa and away from all of that security.
Do you think that's like smoking, that once you try it, you keep wanting to expose yourself to something dangerous, even if it's not the best thing objectively to your safety?
I think it is something like that, but also you get so used to making your own decisions about everything all of the time. So when someone starts, even though the policeman's not doing anything in England or Europe, you just suddenly start feeling crowded and as if you can't make those decisions that you have to make here every day. It's interesting. It's a bit like you're smoking. It is addictive. It becomes part of you. You're never ever fazed by things that break or life changes because it's part of what happens all the time. And you just step into it and continue going. It's a very interesting development that I found when I came here.
Is there any kind of libertarian philosophy behind your feeling of freedom that you have in Africa? Because here you are forced to be a free soul.
In Africa, I'm forced to be a free soul.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the main attractions for me to come here, actually. I think I latched onto it very, very quickly. Independence is something I really enjoy. And any traveler or explorer or whatever loves their independence. And here, everyone is independent. You have to be. You have to stand alone.
There's no second option.
Because there's no second option, exactly.
You either are independent or you perish.
Yes.
How is it to deal with that so precarious situation? I guess that wages there, even for you, that you are a Western person, you might be able to earn more than the average person there because you are maybe better prepared. But still, I feel like you wouldn't really be able to maintain the same kind of lifestyle that you would be able in the UK. How do you deal with that?
Quality of life is something that you have to take out, add into the equation. I can't earn as much money as I could physically earn in Europe. That's correct. But my costs are so much lower here. So my quality of life is actually higher
Higher?
than I could. Yes, my quality of life.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
not my standard of living, quality of living, that they're not quite the same thing. But I believe that even though I don't earn as much money here as in physical zeros, the way I can spend my money here, it means that I have a better quality of life than I face when I'm in the UK for the same amount of money.
have you thought of working online from Kenya and working for a company that's from the UK so you could earn a European wage living in Africa? That would make you the richest person in the country.
I've stepped out of full-time employment now. I write my books, but my wife is a lawyer, and she's a bit younger than me and much more energetic. And she does that now. The last 2 years since the pandemic, she's stepped into the online world and she does cases and international cases with people who are dealing with Africa or Kenya. And she's doing exactly what you're saying, and it's working out very well. We're very, very happy. This Zoom thing and Skype and Teams and all of that stuff has enabled her to become like an international lawyer from our home in Kenya, which is a wonderful development. So yes, you're absolutely right. It does work. I love the idea of digital nomads. I think that's a fantastic revolution that I'm trying to do writing my books, but I don't want to pack my suitcase and travel around all over the world. But I think for youngsters, saying that 20, 30-year-olds, it's a fantastic development that if anyone could do it, I think for the benefit of their mental health and their lifetime experience, which they have to write down one day when they're facing their death, they have to actually sit down and say, what did I do? And it would make their lives wonderful. Even Africa here, I've got a decent enough internet connection now to talk to you. And my wife does it regularly, all the time. I think it's fantastic. And people should do it. They should figure it out and do it. Become me, but 20 years younger than me.
Okay. But the digital nomads are known for not paying income taxes anywhere because they are constantly moving. So they are able to exploit a loophole in the country's laws that enables them to not pay taxes anywhere. And having an online business like a podcast or a YouTube channel or a social media, they are able to earn their money by and not pay any taxes at all. But are you focusing in the financial capacity to not pay taxes or more in the exposure of yourself to new cultures that will destroy your localism that most of the times leads you to think that when you get into small communities, you start playing status games that are stupid. Maybe here in the place where I live, maybe the person who's the coolest is the one who drives the coolest car. But if you are part of a society that's mostly composed of migrants, everyone is just trying to seek for the most efficient option. They are more pragmatic in their choosings, don't you think?
Yes, but I don't think I'm looking at it at the point of a view as someone who likes to explore. You always have to pay your taxes. At the end of the day, it catches up with you and you have to do it. I don't understand the digital aspect of paying the taxes because I don't do that. As I said, I don't want to pack my suitcase. I pay my taxes here in Kenya. I'm looking at it at the point of seeing new places and doing new things. If it was available, when I first went to Thailand in 1988, 89, I packed my bag and said goodbye to my mother, and I didn't speak to her for 6 months until I could find a telephone that worked where I could place a long-distance call, which took about 2 days to do, and then speak to her on a crackly line. It was a totally different world. Whereas now, pack your bags and travel and work in Chiang Mai or Bangkok. and you could speak to your mum every day if you wanted to. So I think those aspects are fantastic. One of the bad things about the nomad traveling is they all do collect in one place, like you say, and then they do affect the local environment, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. The true essence of it is that you could just be on your own somewhere. You don't have to sit with all the other digital nomads. You can sit like here. You wouldn't even meet another digital nomad if you came here, and you could find your way, and you'd have to become part of the bigger community, which would be a growing experience.
It forces you to grow and give up the local dogmas that you have collected through all your life by living in a unique place.
Yes. And you also, different cultures do different things, and they have different languages. And you speak, obviously, 2 languages already at such a young age, which is fantastic. I speak Swahili. So, it's great. It gives you more of a life. It gives you more things to enjoy and do. If you become one of those digital nomads that sits in Chiang Mai in a coffee shop with 50 other digital nomads, I don't think that's the essence of what it should be. In my opinion, it's exploring, and you should be able to take your business and sit on your own somewhere and do your things, but become part of a local community, which is it always makes you a better person.
Because it cannot make you a worse person, because if you are going to be a bad person and you're going to be interacting with someone who you are probably not going to see for a long time, they're not going to be willing to afford the risk of letting you behave in a bad way, because that's like the stationary mafia. There's robbers who stay in a place for a time, and then there's others who move. So the ones who move are the dangerous ones. The ones who stay don't really want to creep the local economy. They want to help the economy out, so it is sustainable. But the one who moves, everyone is constantly seeking for whoever is moving, so they don't fall into their tricks, because he doesn't have a reputation. So you are forced to be a good person.
Also, it's very, very dangerous if you stand on your own and you turn up in a new environment and you start acting stupid. It can be just plain dangerous, and you can feel that it's not the right thing to do. And because you're new to that environment, you don't have friends, you don't have connections, you don't have escape routes, you don't have anything. So you generally have to be a good person.
Yeah. What do you think of hedonic treadmill? Do you know what this term is? Hedonic treadmill.
No. Can you explain it?
Yeah. Basically, little by little, you get accustomed to your new level of well-being. So you don't value it anymore. When you buy a new phone, and it's a better type of phone than the one you had previously, that phone will excite you and will satisfy you for a while. But that satisfaction doesn't last forever. It will come a moment in which you are not satisfied anymore by the fact of having that better phone than the previous one. There's an adaptation there.
Yes, sure, I live within that world. I enjoy my simple things in life. So I'm never chasing the next phone. I have a very basic car. Here, a fully electronic singing, dancing car is of no value, because as soon as it breaks, it's gone. So we have very basic. I still wind my window up with my hand in my car. And there's no central locking. I lock it with a key. Keeping up with the next door neighbor or whatever with the new iPhone is not a huge thing here. It's not something that we view as important.
Nice. So you are more of a minimalist.
Kind of, yes. I would say more that way. More of a contented person living in the state that we're living in. Because I don't have Amazon to type into the thing and have it delivered the next day. That doesn't exist here. So we don't get beaten with advertising here either. It's the main things. You need your food, your light, your water. That's where we're starting with here. So we don't live that. We're not tied up into that circle of consumerism, which I think is what you were describing there, which has all of this redundancy, which we try to stay away from. It doesn't really exist here yet. Probably it will in a few years' time. But now you can't buy the latest iPhone anyway, so it doesn't matter.
But I'm sure that there's other status games.
Yes, everywhere has status games. The rich people drive big Toyotas and race around, and they're painted black with black windows. But that's the politicians and the rich people. That's not us. We're the normal people on the street.
I wanted to share with you a quote from Confucius, and it is, "Life is very simple, but we keep trying to make it more complex."
I know that quote, and I completely agree with it. And I desperately try never to do that in my life. My life is very, very simple, and I keep it simple.
What do you think of this other quote from Confucius? We only live 2 times. And the second one starts when we realize that we only have one.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my age.
That's your age?
I think that quote becomes very relevant when you're between 50 and 60 years old, because you can see the end. So when you're young, then you can't, there's no end. But when you get to my age, and I used to jump off boats diving 20 years ago and do 3 or 4 dives in a day and take people diving with me, and everything was fantastic. And I still dive, but now 1 or 2 dives in a day is maximum, with about 2-hour break in between. And when I get home, I fall asleep. I'm exhausted. So I know that my body is not what it used to be. And I think that's where the Confucius quote, the second part, is you really understand that you have to see everything. But I think you also, I don't know, not everybody, but if you grow within yourself, you need less. So you're happier with less. You don't need everything all of the time. You don't need the new thing.
Interesting how you are able to invert that hedonic treadmill of needing to seek for the next more spectacular thing that will satisfy me in the short term. And you're able to go backwards in that logic and do exactly the opposite. You are doing the basic stuff that you are evolutionarily developed to value, and that it will have a long-term satisfaction in your life. Don't you?
Yes, but I think being content in yourself is an incredibly important skill that you really must try and learn. But society today desperately tries to stop you having it. I think that you're talking about Confucius and Buddhism and all of this stuff connected to it, that they say when you go to become a Buddhist monk and you start in the very, very early stages, you go into a house where there are many, many things, chairs and seats and all of these lovely things in the house that you can enjoy. And as you go up through the grades of becoming a master Buddhist monk, the things disappear. And in the end, when you're the top level, you just have your cell with your bed and your chair and maybe your book. You don't need the extra things anymore, because everything that you have is within yourself and you're happy with that. Modern society, from an outsider's view looking in, as you said about the hedonism quote, it is making you chase the new thing all the time, and that will never, ever make you happy. Or content, which is more important than being happy.
Content, always.
I think if you're content, then all the other emotions come from that. Being content, actually truly being content. And being content within yourself and your life, and accept everything that you have, not hate it, not love it, accept it as part of you and part of your life, that as it is right now. It's very important. But that's a very deep discussion we've moved into there.
Yeah, but what business is there to be made from a society that accept your philosophy of content? I cannot sell you the None.
Exactly. No, it's not a capitalistic society.
Yeah,
and so it doesn't work.
That's what I was referring to. That I will not be able to gain as much from showing you the philosophy that will make you be the most satisfied possible. But I will by making you feel that you are not sufficient if you don't buy the next top tier phone that has just arrived 1 month ago.
That is consumerism and capitalism. I completely agree with you. And that is the way the world runs at the moment. And everybody's agreed, well, most of the countries have agreed that that's the way it should be. I don't. And living in Africa, you don't have to. As I said, I don't have to follow the rules because there aren't any here. I can live how I want to live. We don't have everything here. As I said, we don't have Amazon. So I can't look on Amazon and want something and have it tomorrow. That doesn't exist. And sometimes it takes me 3 or 4 hours to buy oranges because they're just not there. And I have to search for them. So we don't have the get it fast society that you have in Europe. And I like that. And I prefer that way of life. And as I said, I believe that you have to be self-sufficient within yourself for everything. And the new phone doesn't do much for me.
I bet that your mental state is much, much more stable than that of the average person in the West.
I don't know. We don't do. I haven't done any comparisons, but I'd like to think so.
Especially in comparison to young people. I see this with my father. My mental state tends to fluctuate much more than his because I'm not as mature or I'm not as able to see things with perspective. That maybe you, with your experience, are able to see it with that perspective that allows you to stay still. And even if you go one step further even and you go to Kenya and experience the lack of monetary well-being, but you coexist parsimoniously with an environment that has been shown to work with our evolutionary design.
Yes, I think you're right. I think it changes you. It changed me. I would never go back to live in the West. I know you say everything's there and all of the things work and all of. After 5 or 7 years in Kenya, those things didn't attract me anymore. As I said before, it's the freedom that attracts me. And it's my most precious and most valuable asset to myself is my freedom. And I never give it up. And if I go to Europe, the minute I step off the plane, I'm giving it up. I'm losing areas where I'm not allowed to make decisions anymore, or the decisions are made before me. For instance, with the pandemic here, we were watching it on the television. And in Europe, you had fantastic shutdowns. And this was closed and that was closed. And then they had the rollout of the injection and the vaccination. And it was all controlled and it was all done. And people were ringing up and saying, can I have a party? Or can I go to the shop? Or this kind of thing. And then the person in line was saying, not today. You can only have 3 people in your house or 4 people in your house or whatever. Here, they said, it's up to you. If you catch it, sorry.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. So, it's completely different. And we only have 150 intensive care beds in the country anyway. So what can they do?
Maybe there's more factors influencing this. The fact that the average age in Kenya is much, much lower than the one in the UK.
Yes.
Permits
very true.
Society to coexist with COVID in a much better way.
Yes, I think that's very true. I think Africa as a whole has a very young population. Kenya is one of the older ones in our region. If you go to Uganda, it's even younger. So I think that luckily for Africa, that the pandemic in the first instances attacked the older people, and we just don't have them. They're already been taken. They've already gone through something else. We were lucky in that sense that our population was low, young, and resilient. And they were able to fight back at it a lot easier. But I had to be careful at my age. But I say generally, nobody bothered with anything.
What's the thing most exotic or remarkable that you have lived in your 20 years in East Africa?
Where I've lived or what I've lived?
A mixture of both. What's the thing that you would consider to be the most remarkable, or something that you would say, oh, this thing is something worthy of being mentioned?
I think traveling along the coast and going to Lamu and Somalia, I think that those places are the wildest places I've ever visited, and they are absolutely pristine and beautiful. Anybody who gets the opportunity to travel to Kenya should spend some time in Lamu. It's absolutely a wonderful environment, a beautiful island, and just a remarkable place to be. I wrote about it in several of my books. It's just wonderful. But if you come to Kenya, we have a massive amount of things to see. We've got volcanoes, we have a rift valley, we have mountains, we have beaches, we have sea life, we have lions and we have elephants, we have everything to see. If someone was to ask me what's a lovely, remarkable thing to see in Kenya, I'd say the coastline and go north towards Lamu.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. But is that superior beauty in comparison to, let's say, the UK, due to geological or climate or just the nature of around it, or is it due to lack of human development?
Lack of human development. It's a vast empty space.
So nature.
Right on the beach. Nature, yeah, there are elephants on the beach. It's a beautiful place to visit. It's completely natural.
So it is not that Africa got blessed in natural terms of being more beautiful than any other places. It is just that they didn't modify the substrate that is common all around the world, that every single place in the world has its own beauty, but the one in Africa has not been as modified yet, so they still keep that. Is it that?
That's one of the reasons. Everywhere is beautiful. You know, if you go to Spain, if you go to England or Germany or France, they have beautiful places to visit. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder is a saying that we have in England, that it's what attracts the person who's looking. And to me, because I love the ocean, I love the beaches, I love wild open spaces, which are full of, you know, creatures and jungles and bush and all this kind of stuff. So to me, that area is beautiful as a personal thing to see. And it's beautiful because it's been left alone to just develop on its own. There's no people there, which is another good thing.
Oh yeah, a lack of people certainly helps you feel more free than if you are constantly being watched or controlled. What do you think is the low-hanging fruit in terms of knowledge that could improve my odds of surviving in case I wanted to live in Kenya for a period?
Be friendly and happy and willing to sit down and talk to people. Forget your time. If you want to survive here, or if you travel anywhere really, and you actually mix with the local people, you need to spend time and slowly learn the language. Even if you think you're silly, learn the language. But throw your clock away, especially in Africa, because people don't live by time here. They live by their own, by the morning and the nighttime, really. We don't have to be anywhere at any particular given time, and they're willing to sit and talk. So if you wanted to come, be ready to sit and chat and enjoy the day. It's what African people do. They enjoy the day.
What's some of the things that you love the most doing in your free time?
I love scuba diving. I love sailing very much. I sail sailing boats. And I love visiting the game parks and we travel around East Africa a lot, and there's so many beautiful things to see. I love visiting in Uganda. We were there not so long ago visiting Murchison Falls and the gorillas. And then in Kenya, you have so many beautiful things. I'm going next month to Mount Longonot, which is a big crater from an extinct volcano, which is a very beautiful place, and I'm looking forward to visiting. So I do a lot of that. Scuba diving, fishing, sailing, traveling.
Have you considered moving to Australia as you know, Youngbloods, the YouTube channel? I love the lifestyle. And I think that you could have a relatively similar lifestyle in Australia and still have the benefits from the UK in terms of development.
Well, maybe, yes. But I'm a bit old to move now. I'm going to stay here. But you should. There's another YouTube channel as well called Back to Basics, which is a wonderful one as well, very similar to Youngbloods. It's called Back to Basics. And that man travels around on a boat and goes spearfishing and living on the beach and all this kind of stuff with his girlfriend. I prefer it over young bloods actually because it's even wilder.
Oh, wow.
But not for me, I'm afraid. I'm in Kenya now. I'll stay in Kenya.
Okay. And if you decided to go to Australia, not now, maybe 30 years ago, you would already know the language. So the barrier would be much lower.
That's true. I agree with you. But it's not Africa. It's Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. You don't have that feeling of, I'm 100% free because there's nothing that could take my liberty out of me. Because the state is not capable of controlling every piece of land in the way that the state is in the West.
That's true. Exactly true. And they don't bother. They leave us alone.
I don't think that they don't bother about us. It's just that they cannot control. They don't have physical means of doing it.
True. The capacity is not there. Yes, that's true.
Steve, what are your books about?
I would like people to read my books because they're all about Africa and they're based on the coast here of East Africa. They're action thriller books, which people on Amazon like and they're enjoying reading them. And I like to mix a lot of culture into the books. So I have Swahili words. I use a lot of Swahili words in there, which I explain. I think if you enjoy action thrillers, it's a nice change from the Patterson and the Dempsey and the other writers who write in my genre, because it's set in a very much more of a unique, exotic, tropical place, which not so many people have visited. So it gives you a nice eye-opener into a different world, a nice escapism world where you can get a glimpse of the culture and the way that people live here.
I've seen the reviews that your books get on Amazon, and I must say, they are great.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you, Alex.
No, yeah.
That makes me feel better.
I think most of the people in the comments on your books are saying, oh, this is all great. This is amazing. The experiences. I wish I was free to do this, but I have a family. I can't move. All the people are saying that. And I think that you are pointing out to something, evolutionary lack that we currently have in the West. That you are precisely satisfying that. The lack of interaction with unmodified nature.
Yes. Yes. And back to basics. You live in a basic way. My protagonist lives on a boat, a big dhow, a wooden dhow, and he has no electricity, no telephones, no nothing. He fishes for his living. He has what we call a jiko, which is like a cooker, which he uses charcoal. Everything is nice and simple. He climbs up a tree to get a coconut, but then he goes on adventures just to make it more interesting.
But there's a downside here. Nature, in its unmodified state, is the most hostile thing I can think of.
Or beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful too. Those are compatible.
Yeah. Life is hostile, though. You can get run over in the street. The likelihood of me getting run over is very remote. But the likelihood of you getting run over is a lot higher than me.
Well, yeah, but if you check driving accidents, what are the rates of that of people dying there per 100,000 miles? The odds there are astronomically higher than the ones in the UK.
Are they? In Kenya?
Yeah.
Is that true? Oh, I chose the wrong example.
No, but in terms of the odds of you dying, it might be lower, but the odds of dying if you drive 100,000 miles, which is completely different, are much higher there than in the UK. You get what I'm saying?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting statistic. I wouldn't have thought that to be correct, but I don't know. I don't know. That's very interesting.
No, but because of there's been so little cars, the odds of you getting crushed by a car are super low.
I see. Yes. Yes, I see what you're saying. I understand. Also, when I go back to England, it takes me 3 or 4 days to drive as fast as everybody else.
Oh, wow.
Because we don't drive fast here. We drive like in kilometers, 50, 60. That's about it. The roads can't take any more than that.
Yeah.
So when I get to England and we're all on the motorway and they're all going at 70 miles an hour, it's like a space rocket for me for the first couple of days. It's mad.
Oh, wow. Hey, Steve, do you have a webpage or somewhere where people can find about your books and where to buy them and maybe contact you?
Yeah, sure. My website is www.stevebreakerbooks.com. And my email's there if you want to drop me a line or ask any questions about Kenya, or if you're coming to Kenya and you want some advice, just drop me a line. I'm always happy to chat.
Perfect. I will leave the link to your webpage and maybe your email too in the show description.
Thank you very much, Alex. That's brilliant. It's been a lovely conversation, by the way. Very, very enlightening.
I always enjoy talking to different qualitatively people.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad I was of use.
Yeah, you certainly are. Never think the opposite.
Thank you.